The air in the university auditorium was thick with a palpable blend of excitement and nervous energy, a humid early summer afternoon in the heartland of America. Thousands of graduates, clad in their ceremonial caps and gowns, buzzed with anticipation, their families filling the vast space with a symphony of whispers, camera clicks, and muffled cheers. My own heart thrummed a frantic, almost painful rhythm against my ribs, a chaotic mix of exhilaration and a deep-seated dread. This was it. The culmination of 4 grueling years, a relentless marathon of late-night study sessions fueled by countless cups of lukewarm coffee, the constant, gnawing anxiety of looming deadlines, and the quiet, desperate hope that I was finally, truly doing something right. My name, Sophia Miller, was next on the list, poised to be called, echoing through the loudspeakers that hung from the rafters. I adjusted the tassel on my cap, my fingers trembling slightly, my gaze instinctively sweeping across the sea of faces in the audience, searching for the one that mattered most, the one whose approval I had unconsciously craved my entire life. And then, I saw him. My father, Robert. He was seated in the 3rd row, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, a familiar, unyielding, stern expression etched deeply onto his face. There was no hint of a smile, no small wave of encouragement, just that unwavering, critical stare, a gaze that had followed me, judged me, and defined me since my earliest memories. Beside him, my mother sat, her shoulders slightly slumped, offering me a weak, almost apologetic smile, her hand resting tentatively, almost fearfully, on his arm, as if to placate an unseen storm. I had always craved his approval, a silent, desperate plea that resonated through every academic achievement, every extracurricular activity I pursued, every carefully chosen word I uttered in his presence. From the moment I was old enough to understand his expectations, it felt as though my entire existence was a performance staged for an audience of one, a demanding, unforgiving critic who perceived every minor stumble, every deviation from his rigid path, as a catastrophic, unforgivable failure. "You're not trying hard enough, Sophia. Why can't you be more like your cousin, Michael? He knows what he wants. Failure is not an option in this family, Sophia. It simply isn't tolerated." These were the insidious mantras of my childhood, whispered threats that subtly yet powerfully shaped my ambition, twisting my self-perception into a distorted mirror image of his impossible standards. I graduated high school with top honors, secured admission to a highly respected state university, and, against his explicit wishes, chose a major in English literature, a decision he openly scoffed at, his disdain palpable. "What exactly are you going to do with that, Sophia? Teach, write frivolous poetry? Starve in a garret somewhere?" He had always envisioned a different path for me, a path paved with prestige and financial security, law or perhaps business, something tangible, profitable, something that would undeniably reflect well on him, on his carefully constructed image of success. My profound passion for stories, for the intricate, delicate dance of words, for the profound beauty of human expression, was summarily dismissed as a frivolous indulgence, a wasteful distraction, a clear sign of my inherent impracticality and lack of foresight. As the dean, a kindly, silver-haired woman, began to call out names, a nervous, almost electric energy rippled through the rows of graduates. My turn was approaching rapidly, a looming inevitability. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying desperately to steady my trembling hands, to calm the frantic beating of my heart. This was for me, I reminded myself, a silent mantra. This was my accomplishment. I had earned this moment, every single ounce of it. I had navigated the complex, often bewildering labyrinth of academia, survived the crushing pressures of expectation and self-doubt, and emerged, against all odds, with a degree, a tangible testament to my unwavering perseverance, my quiet resilience. I was, in that moment, genuinely proud of myself. And for a fleeting, almost reckless moment, I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, he would be too. That perhaps, just this once, he would set aside his rigid expectations and simply see me, his daughter, standing there, triumphant. "Sophia Miller!" My name rang out, amplified by the powerful loudspeakers, reverberating through the vast hall. I walked across the stage, my diploma cover clutched tightly, almost desperately in my hand, a wide, triumphant smile plastered onto my face, a fragile mask of joy. I shook the dean's hand, posed for the obligatory, flashbulb-popping photo, my eyes scanning the audience one last time for a sign of recognition, of pride. And then, as I turned to descend the steps, the weight of my achievement suddenly feeling impossibly heavy, I heard it, a voice loud and chillingly clear, cutting through the polite, scattered applause, sharp and precise as a shard of broken glass. I didn't raise a failure. The words weren't shouted, not in the traditional sense, but they carried an unnerving, chilling resonance, amplified by the sudden collective hush that fell over our entire section of the audience. My head snapped towards the sound, my eyes wide with a dawning horror. My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly and harshly against the polished floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, burned with an intensity I had never witnessed before, a raw, unfiltered disappointment that felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut. He didn't look at me, not really, not into my eyes. His gaze was fixed somewhere beyond me, as if I were merely an inconvenient backdrop to his public declaration, an insignificant detail in his grand, self-serving narrative. And then, without another word, without a single backward glance, he turned and walked out. He didn't glance back at my mother, who sat frozen, her face pale and etched with a familiar despair. He didn't acknowledge the stunned, horrified silence he left in his wake, the collective gasp that rippled through the rows. He just walked, his broad shoulders disappearing through the double doors at the back of the auditorium, leaving me exposed, utterly humiliated, and profoundly, irrevocably shattered on what was supposed to be the biggest, most joyous day of my life. The applause resumed, hesitant and awkward, a desperate, almost pathetic attempt to mend the gaping wound he had so carelessly torn open. But it was too late. The damage was done. Everyone had heard it. The whispers started immediately, a ripple effect of morbid curiosity and thinly veiled pity. I felt 1,000 eyes on me, dissecting my shame, judging my worth, confirming his damning verdict. My triumphant smile crumbled, replaced by a mask of numb disbelief, a hollow emptiness. My diploma cover, once a symbol of achievement, now felt impossibly heavy, utterly worthless. The joy, the pride, the years of relentless hard work, all of it evaporated in the searing, suffocating heat of his contempt. I stumbled off the stage, my legs feeling like jelly, disconnected from my body, and somehow found my way back to my seat, the cheers of other graduates sounding hollow, distant, and utterly meaningless. I didn't see my mother again that day. She must have left shortly after him, unable to face the devastating aftermath, the public fallout of his cruel pronouncement. I spent the remainder of the ceremony in a disorienting fog, my mind relentlessly replaying his words, each syllable a fresh, agonizing stab to my already bleeding heart. I didn't raise a failure, but in that precise, agonizing moment, that's exactly what I felt like, the biggest, most profound failure of all. The weight of his words pressed down on me, a suffocating blanket of despair. The next few weeks were a blur of self-doubt, profound despair, and a crushing sense of abandonment. I moved out of my cramped dorm room, packed my meager belongings into a few cardboard boxes, and found a tiny, ridiculously overpriced apartment in a rather run-down part of the city, a place that felt as broken as I did. My desperate calls to my mother went unanswered or were met with vague, evasive excuses, her voice strained and distant. My father, predictably, was utterly unreachable, his silence a deafening roar. The profound silence from both of them was louder, more damning, than any shouting match. A definitive statement of abandonment, a clear declaration that I was truly, irrevocably on my own. I was adrift in a world that suddenly felt cold, unforgiving, and utterly indifferent to my pain. His words had stripped me bare, leaving me with no sense of direction, no purpose, no anchor. I took a soul-crushing job as a barista in a bustling coffee shop, the bitter irony not lost on me. My English literature degree, the very thing he had so scornfully dismissed, felt like a cruel, elaborate joke. Every latte I meticulously poured, every indifferent customer I served, was a constant, painful reminder of his chilling prophecy. Starve. I was barely making ends meet, living precariously paycheck to paycheck, the crushing weight of his judgment pressing down on me, suffocating my spirit, stealing my breath. There were countless nights I cried myself to sleep, curled up tightly in my tiny, uncomfortable bed, wishing with every fiber of my being that I could simply disappear, vanish into thin air, wishing I had never been born, wishing I was someone else, anyone else, someone worthy of his elusive love, someone who wasn't, in his eyes, a failure. The shame was a constant, unwelcome companion, a dark, insidious shadow clinging to my every step, whispering doubts into my ear. I felt utterly, hopelessly lost, convinced that his cruel words were not merely an opinion, but a definitive, undeniable truth about my very existence, a brand burned onto my soul. The despair, though a heavy, suffocating cloak, could not entirely extinguish the tiny ember of defiance that, against all odds, began to glow deep within me. It wasn't a sudden, explosive burst of flame, but a slow, persistent, almost imperceptible burn, fueled by a quiet, simmering rage that had been building, festering within me for years. His words, intended to utterly crush my spirit, to reduce me to nothing, eventually began to chafe, to irritate, to ignite a spark of rebellion. I didn't raise a failure. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of that public pronouncement, the profound humiliation it inflicted, the casual, almost dismissive cruelty of it all, was my entire worth, my very essence, truly defined by his impossibly narrow, self-serving perception of success? Was my life destined to be dictated, controlled by his fleeting approval, or more accurately, by his perpetual lack thereof? The answer slowly, painfully began to form in the quiet recesses of my mind. No. A resounding, defiant no. My worth was not his to define. My life was unequivocally mine to live, on my own terms, by my own rules. The turning point wasn't a dramatic, earth-shattering epiphany, but a surprisingly mundane Tuesday morning. I was mindlessly wiping down the counter at the coffee shop, the rhythmic motion almost meditative, when I found myself listening intently to a podcast about incredibly successful entrepreneurs who had, against all odds, started from absolutely nothing. One particular speaker, a formidable woman who had built a multi-million-dollar tech empire after dropping out of college, spoke with compelling conviction about the transformative power of resilience, about the courage required to find your own unique path, about the profound importance of defining success on your own terms, independent of external validation. Her words resonated deeply within me, stirring something long dormant, something that had been buried under layers of self-doubt and fear. It wasn't about proving him wrong anymore, not directly, not in a vengeful way. It was about proving myself right. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, about meticulously building a life that was authentically, unapologetically mine, regardless of his perpetual judgment, his dismissive sneers. I started small, taking cautious, tentative steps. My English literature degree, once deemed utterly useless by my father, might not have been a direct, clear-cut path to corporate riches, but it had, unbeknownst to him, honed my writing skills to a sharp edge, cultivated my ability to conduct thorough research, to synthesize complex information, to craft compelling, emotionally resonant narratives. I vividly remembered my beloved professor, Dr. I.J. Evans, a kind, wise woman who had once told me, with genuine conviction, "Sophia, your words have power. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Her voice, gentle and encouraging, was a stark, comforting contrast to his harsh, critical pronouncements. Armed with this quiet encouragement, I began diligently searching for freelance writing gigs online. Anything, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, to supplement my meager barista income. It was slow going at first, a frustrating crawl. The competition was fierce, the pay often abysmal. I found myself writing mind-numbingly dull articles about dog grooming, crafting overly enthusiastic product reviews for obscure, uninteresting gadgets, and even ghostwriting a few bland blog posts about financial planning. Topics far, far removed from the profound literary masterpieces I had once envisioned creating. But with each completed assignment, each small payment received, a tiny, fragile seed of confidence took root, slowly blossoming within me. I was earning money with my words. I was creating something, however small. I wasn't starving. My days quickly morphed into a relentless, exhausting cycle. Early morning shifts at the coffee shop, then rushing home, my body aching with fatigue, to spend countless hours hunched over my battered laptop, typing furiously, driven by an almost manic energy, fueled by cheap instant coffee and an unyielding, stubborn refusal to simply give up. Sleep became an elusive luxury. A social life was a distant, forgotten concept. My tiny apartment, once a stark symbol of my profound isolation, gradually transformed into my sanctuary, my battlefield, my personal workshop, a space where I could finally, truly, be myself. I immersed myself in learning about SEO, content marketing, digital publishing. I devoured countless online courses, watched an endless stream of YouTube tutorials, and actively joined vibrant online communities of freelance writers, soaking up every piece of information, every invaluable tip, every clever trick of the trade. I was a sponge, absorbing knowledge at an astonishing rate. I was building something meticulously, painstakingly, brick by agonizing brick. The challenges I faced were immense, almost insurmountable at times. There were weeks, long, terrifying weeks, when the freelance work inexplicably dried up, and a cold, paralyzing panic would set in, threatening to consume me entirely. There were unscrupulous clients who simply disappeared without paying, leaving me frustrated, disheartened, and financially vulnerable. There were moments of profound, soul-crushing self-doubt when his voice, that insidious, critical voice, would echo relentlessly in my head, whispering, "Failure, failure, failure." I vividly remember one particularly brutal week. My ancient laptop, my lifeline, crashed spectacularly, taking with it days of unsaved, irreplaceable work. I had no money for repairs, no backup, no alternative. I sat on the cold, hard floor of my apartment, surrounded by the shattered pieces of my ambition, and cried until my eyes were swollen shut, until there were no more tears left to shed. It felt in that moment as though the entire universe was conspiring with my father, confirming his damning prophecy, sealing my fate. But then a strange, unexpected thing happened. Instead of succumbing to despair, instead of simply giving up, I felt a powerful surge of pure, unadulterated anger. Not at him, not at the universe, but at the very idea of allowing myself to be utterly defeated, to be broken. I found a cheap, used laptop online, paid for it with the last of my meager savings, and with a renewed sense of grim determination, started over, from scratch. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to shift, to change. My writing skills improved dramatically. My professional portfolio grew, becoming more robust, more impressive. I started attracting better, more reputable clients, commanding significantly higher rates for my work. I specialized in long-form content, crafting in-depth articles that required meticulous research and a nuanced understanding of complex topics. My English literature background, once deemed utterly useless by my father, became my unexpected secret weapon, my unique advantage. I could dissect intricate information, craft compelling, persuasive arguments, and tell a story in a way that others simply couldn't replicate. I was no longer just a writer. I was a storyteller, a meticulous researcher, a strategic content architect. I vividly remember the day I landed my first major contract, a lucrative 6-month project for a promising tech startup. The pay was more than I had made in 2 months working tirelessly at the coffee shop. With a quiet sense of triumph swelling in my chest, a feeling of profound vindication, I gave my notice. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic exits, just a simple, dignified step forward into my new, self-made future. The manager, a kind, understanding woman who had witnessed my struggles and quietly supported me, wished me well. "You're going to do great things, Sophia," she said, and her words, unlike his, felt genuine, earned, a balm to my wounded soul. I was still living frugally, still working incredibly long hours, but the fundamental nature of my work had profoundly changed. It was no longer a desperate, frantic scramble for mere survival, but a passionate, exhilarating pursuit of excellence, a joyful exploration of my own capabilities. I was meticulously building a reputation, cultivating a valuable network of contacts, forging a future that was entirely my own. The fear of failure was still there, a faint, lingering echo, a ghost of the past, but it was now overwhelmingly overshadowed by the thrilling excitement of creation, the deep satisfaction of seeing my words published, making a tangible impact, shaping conversations. I was no longer defined by what he thought I wasn't, but by what I was powerfully, undeniably becoming. I was Sophia Miller, a professional writer, a burgeoning entrepreneur, a woman who was slowly, deliberately, and powerfully proving herself right, proving her own worth. The journey was far from over, the path ahead still long and winding, but the direction was now crystal clear. I was moving forward, relentlessly, one carefully chosen word, one successful project, one quiet victory at a time. The path was arduous, undeniably paved with countless rejections and moments of soul-crushing doubt, but each step, no matter how small or difficult, was a powerful testament to my unwavering resolve, my unbreakable spirit. I was meticulously building a life that was unequivocally mine, a life that was a quiet yet profoundly impactful rebellion against the suffocating narrative he had so cruelly tried to impose upon me. The tech startup project, a monumental undertaking, proved to be an absolute game-changer in every conceivable way. It wasn't merely about the substantial financial compensation. It was the profound validation it offered, the unparalleled opportunity to immerse myself in something truly meaningful, to witness my words, my ideas, contribute directly to a larger, compelling vision. I poured every ounce of my being into it, working tirelessly late into the night, fueled by an almost insatiable, newfound sense of purpose and creative drive. The project, against all odds, was an undeniable success, and consequently, my professional reputation soared, spreading rapidly through industry circles. Referrals began pouring in, followed by direct inquiries from prominent companies. I was no longer desperately chasing gigs. Instead, lucrative gigs were actively chasing me, seeking out my expertise. I strategically hired a virtual assistant to meticulously handle the burgeoning administrative tasks, thereby freeing up invaluable time for me to focus on the core aspects of writing and strategic planning. My tiny apartment, once a stark, painful symbol of my relentless struggle, miraculously transformed into a bustling, vibrant home office, a sanctuary filled with towering stacks of books, expansive whiteboards covered in intricate ideas, and the comforting hum of my new, powerful laptop, a testament to my burgeoning success. The biggest, most formidable challenge I faced, however, was not external, but profoundly internal. The deeply ingrained belief that I was inherently flawed, that I was, at my core, a failure, was a stubborn, insidious beast, a relentless internal critic. Even as my business flourished, expanding beyond my wildest dreams, a persistent whisper of doubt would subtly creep in, an unwelcome guest in my mind. It's just luck. It won't last. You're still not good enough. I painfully realized that merely proving him wrong externally, achieving outward success, was simply not enough. I desperately needed to heal the deep, festering wound he had inflicted upon my very soul, to excise the poison of his words. I finally started therapy, something I had stubbornly resisted for years, viewing it as a sign of weakness. It was uncomfortable, often agonizingly painful, revisiting old traumatic memories, meticulously dissecting the complex, dysfunctional dynamics of my relationship with my father. But surprisingly, it was also profoundly liberating. Through countless sessions, I learned about the insidious nature of emotional abuse, about the destructive projection of one's own deep-seated insecurities onto others. I slowly, painstakingly began to understand that his cruel words were not, in fact, a reflection of my inherent worth, but rather a tragic manifestation of his own unresolved issues, his own profound fears, his own crippling inability to connect authentically, genuinely, with another human being. He wasn't merely disappointed in me. He was, at a deeper level, profoundly disappointed in himself, and I, his vulnerable daughter, was an easy, convenient target for his misplaced, corrosive anger. This profound realization marked a monumental shift in my perception, a seismic change in my internal landscape. The intense, burning anger I had harbored for so long, a heavy burden on my spirit, slowly, gradually began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet, almost melancholic sense of pity. He was, I understood, tragically trapped in his own rigid, unforgiving worldview, utterly incapable of seeing beyond his narrow, self-serving definition of success. He had, in his relentless pursuit of his own distorted ideals, missed out on so much, on the pure, unadulterated joy of a daughter passionately pursuing her true calling, on the simple, profound beauty of unconditional love, on the genuine connection that binds families. His words at my graduation, once a source of searing, unbearable shame, now felt like a tragic, poignant testament to his own profound limitations, his own emotional poverty. My business, now a formidable entity, continued its impressive trajectory, thriving beyond all expectations. I meticulously rebranded, launched a sleek professional website, and expanded my offerings to include highly sought-after consulting services, in addition to my core writing expertise. I strategically hired a small, dedicated team of talented freelance writers, meticulously mentoring them, generously sharing the invaluable knowledge and hard-won wisdom I had painstakingly acquired through years of struggle. I vividly remembered the profound loneliness of my early days, the terrifying feeling of being utterly adrift, and I vowed, with unwavering conviction, to create a supportive, nurturing environment for others, a stark contrast to my own isolating experience. I even established a small, meaningful scholarship fund specifically for aspiring English literature students, a quiet yet powerful nod to the unconventional path I had bravely chosen, the very path he had so cruelly ridiculed. It wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. It was about building something profoundly positive, something genuinely meaningful, something that authentically reflected my deeply held values, not his. One day, several years after that devastating graduation ceremony, I received an unexpected, almost shocking email. It was from my mother. She had, to my surprise, seen a prominent article about my rapidly growing company featured in a prestigious national business magazine. Her email was short, hesitant, filled with a poignant mixture of pride and profound regret. She offered a heartfelt apology for her prolonged silence, for her agonizing inability to stand up for me, to protect me from his cruelty. She unequivocally stated that she was proud of me, truly, genuinely proud, a sentiment I had longed to hear for decades. It wasn't the full cinematic reconciliation I might have once naively dreamed of, But it was, undeniably, a significant, hopeful start. I replied, cautiously, carefully, opening a fragile door that had been hermetically sealed for far too long. Through subsequent, tentative conversations, I learned that my father had, predictably, retired, his grand political ambitions never fully realized, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. He was, she subtly hinted, a profoundly lonely man, isolated by his own choices. The irony was palpable, almost unbearable. He had relentlessly chased a hollow version of success that ultimately left him isolated, emotionally barren, while I, the supposed failure, had meticulously built a life rich with profound purpose, genuine connection, and authentic hard-won achievement. Today I stand in my own expansive, meticulously designed office, a spacious, light-filled room offering breathtaking panoramic views of the vibrant city skyline. My company, proudly named Miller Content Solutions, is not just surviving, but unequivocally thriving, a testament to years of relentless dedication. We collaborate with major influential brands, meticulously craft compelling, impactful stories, and empower businesses to forge genuine, meaningful connections with their diverse audiences. I am no longer merely a writer. I am a CEO, a compassionate mentor, a decisive leader, a force to be reckoned with. I travel extensively for prestigious conferences, confidently speak on influential panels, and openly share my deeply personal story of resilience, of overcoming adversity. When I recount my journey, I deliberately choose not to dwell on the bitterness, the pain of the past, but rather on the transformative power of my experiences, on the profound strength derived from defining your own inherent worth, on the incredible ability to transmute adversity into potent fuel for growth and self-discovery. The faint echo of his cruel words, "I didn't raise a failure," still occasionally lingers, a distant, almost imperceptible whisper in the quiet recesses of my mind. But it no longer holds any power over me, no longer dictates my emotions or my self-perception. It serves instead as a poignant reminder of where I came from, of the crucible that forged me, of the intense fire that refined my spirit. I didn't become successful despite his words. I became successful, truly successful, because of them. They relentlessly pushed me, forced me to look deep within myself, to confront my fears, to unearth a profound strength I never knew I possessed. They taught me, unequivocally, that true lasting success is not, and never will be, measured by external validation, by fleeting titles, by accumulated wealth, or by the elusive approval of others. It is, instead, profoundly measured by unwavering integrity, by a deep sense of purpose, by the quiet, profound satisfaction of meticulously building a life that is authentically, unapologetically yours, brick by painstaking brick, word by powerful word. I am Sophia Miller, and I am not a failure. I am a survivor, a relentless creator, a woman who meticulously built her own powerful definition of success. One carefully chosen word, one compelling story, one hard-won triumph at a time. And in doing so, in this arduous, transformative journey, I finally found the one thing I had always desperately craved: my own unwavering, unconditional approval.